Okay, we're on to our second work session. This is Jordan will be presenting an overview of some of the bills that may be coming back, didn't quite make it out of the session for our consideration. Take it away, Jordan.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, Council. Again, for the record, Jordan Bogie, Senior Policy Analyst. Happy to be with you here this morning. I also just wanted to note on the previous conversation, myself, my counterpart at the City of Vancouver, and our lobbyists for both the county and the City of Vancouver are talking about different ways that we can try to get legislative support for annexation. And so there are some tools that exist, some sales tax benefits that can help support annexation, but the City of Vancouver, has been doing the math on that, and it's not penciling out currently. So they're hoping to get some extra state support. So that is also a conversation that's ongoing. I just wanted to mention that in light of the previous conversation. So today we're going to be talking about some bills that were introduced last session, did not pass, but that we anticipate coming back. And I just want to say, if you haven't had a chance to check out the full report from our lobbyists, I encourage you to do that, to skim through, see if there are any other bills of interest that you'd like to bring up over the next few months as we're working through our legislative session planning process. There were about 100 bills that were brought up in that report, and we'll just be talking about a handful of them today. And our goals and agenda are to begin thinking about the 2026 session. We have already had a few conversations. We had a work session toward the end of July to take an initial look at council priorities and get some feedback. Want to reorient council to some of the 2025 bills that we had looked at last session that are set to return in 2026, and a handful of others that are related to some topics that council has been talking about, to see if you'd like to take an initial position on, and then get any direction from you. And we'll talk a little bit about the timeline between now and the start of the 2026 session. And I also just want to say that, this session is going to be a little bit shorter and focused on some of these returning bills, but the process of identifying priorities and laying the groundwork for anything that we want to get done in the next session will be happening through the fall. I'll be talking to different county departments to see if they have priorities for you as the council to consider, and we're going to have a lot of other meetings and conversations over the course of the fall. So we're trying to do this. My hope is to do this in bite-sized pieces, so that it is easy for you to digest it as we go along the way. And then just also, before we kind of get into this, I just wanted to note a little bit of what I'm hearing about the 2026 session. As we know, the state's fiscal position is very challenging. There is a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen with state federal funding. Federal funding, either directly or indirectly, accounts for about a quarter of the state budget, so it's pretty significant. We are likely to be playing defense on state-funded programs, monies we get from the state, as the state is looking for areas to tighten its belt. And as we think about bills that we might want to support, or policies that this council wants to advocate for, we should be aware that the legislature is probably really going to be focusing hard on either fiscally neutral or cost-saving measures. And we also need to be vigilant, because one way that the state sometimes likes to cut state costs is to pass those costs on to local governments, which would not be ideal for us, obviously. So that's something we'll need to think about as we move forward as well. Next slide, please. So wanted to first talk about a couple of bills that are returning that council supported in 2025, and see if council has an interest in supporting those bills again in 2026. The first one that I'll mention here is House Bill 1098. And 1098 would create the County Local Road Grant Program within CRAB, which is the County Road Administration Board. This bill made it fairly far last year, but did not end up passing. The transportation budget did actually create the program, but it didn't provide any funding for it. And so this bill is likely to return with a request to kind of set up a dedicated funding stream. And what it would do is support a grant program that would support local county road programs that we have in our 6-year plans. And there would be kind of an eligibility list of criteria, and it would provide extra state support for county road programming, as county roads make up a huge portion of the roads in our state. And so I just wanted to check to see if council would be interested in supporting that again, and if so, we can note that and move forward. So I'll pause there and see if there's any thoughts on House Bill 1098.
I would be supportive of supporting it. And while I have the mic here, what is the process for legislators selecting the bills that are returning? Do all of them get considered, or is there a selection process?
Yeah, so essentially, the sponsor would submit the bill again, or say, hey, I want to bring this back, continue to try to get a hearing, try to move it forward in the process. And so it works similar to how legislators submit bills at the beginning of the session, but they just basically they can refile the bill so that it says, hey, we already have this bill in process over the 2-year session, and try to move it forward that way.
So it'd be up to the original sponsor.
Yes, although I suppose if the sponsor didn't want to continue and someone else wanted to sponsor the bill, they could try to advance the same or a similar version of the bill on their own as well.
Great, thank you.
Question, Jordan. So there was already a bill that passed that created the program, and so is 1098 specifically related to funding it?
I think that's kind of still a bit of an open question. So the program was technically created not as a standalone bill, but as part of the transportation budget language itself. And so this bill, as it comes back, it may tweak that language in the transportation budget some, but I think the main impact that would impact us as a county is that it would hopefully create a dedicated funding stream and compel some state funding for this program, rather than just having some language living in the budget bill.
Where would that source of where would the revenue stream come from?
I believe it would come from some might come from the gas tax, and I believe that some would come from, I'm looking here, the motor vehicle fund, which does receive disbursements from the state.
Okay, and would that be just requiring allocation from existing funding to fund this particular program, or would that require additional increases to those sources of revenue, so tax increase?
My understanding is it would dedicate specific funding, but it would not create a new standalone tax on its own, but would rather require that some funding go to this program.
Great, thank you.
Ken, would you like to add anything?
Sure. Council, for the record, Ken Lader, Public Works Director. Thank you, Jordan. I think Jordan's correct. These are funds that are already being collected. There was an adjustment to some of those taxes in the last biennium. For us, this would look like if we were eligible and qualified for some of the dollars, it would help our preservation program, which are a lot of our local dollars that we use from the County Road Fund already. It would mean that they would be supplemented if we were awarded this type of grant. And then I think this bill did have specific provisions for underserved areas and environmentally sensitive areas and a few things like that. So certainly something we support from the roadside and in our partnership with CRAB.
Thank you.
So I would still be supportive.
Okay, do we need 3 people at this moment?
That if yeah, I mean, if we want to get direction from council, we would need 3. If folks aren't ready to make a decision on this or any other bills at this time, we can also
Bring 'em
put a
back.
pin in them and bring back as well.
Okay. Is there a third? Oh, there is a third. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, council. So the second bill that is on this list that council supported last year is Senate Bill 5278. And this is related to the overcrowding issue that has repeatedly come up at our juvenile rehabilitation institutions. And what this bill would do is require DCYF to develop rules related to bed capacity usage and ways to avoid overcrowding. And there has been a lot of you probably read about it, and as you recall from last session, there was a lot of conversation about this. It would require essentially that when the number of people residing at an institution reaches 90% of their bed capacity, it would require DCYF and those institutions to start planning and identifying methods to avoid exceeding that bed capacity. And allows them to take actions to reduce the population of juvenile rehabilitation institutions when they hit 105% of capacity, and requires DCYF to establish rules for defining and developing internal behavioral management infraction systems and procedures to respond to threats to safety of other folks in a juvenile institution. This was another one that made it pretty far last session, but didn't quite get over the finish line. And my understanding is that it's very likely that this will move forward again this year, and that's something that I know that we are familiar with in our jail as well. And dealing with these capacity issues is something that has been a focus of WASAC as well.
I would be in support.
Same here.
Okay, 3 in support. Michelle, do you want to weigh in? Okay, well, I guess moving on.
Okay. So the next bill I would like to chat with you about this morning is a bill that council has supported in prior sessions, but decided to be neutral on the version that came up this last session. And that's House Bill 1058, which provides sales and business and occupation tax credit for projects that improve railroad infrastructure. And so this in particular are these kind of class 1 short line railroads. It also provides a mechanism where larger railroads can, or other operators that have railroad ties and things like that, can donate them that might not be useful for these larger railroads, but that can be used, again, were repurposed for smaller railroads, and they can get basically a tax credit for donating these used ties and things like that that can be used on these smaller local railroads. And then there's also, in addition to the B&O and sales, there's some public utility tax credits and exemptions that can be used toward maintenance, modernization, and new construction on these railroad lines. And so wanted to bring back to see if council was interested in taking a position at this point, or if you'd like to remain neutral on this bill. But this is something that's come up the last several years.
Go ahead.
I would think staying neutral would be a good idea again.
I think I would agree with that. I do have a question though. Does the county benefit from the B&O tax credit?
So it would be, I believe, for the maintenance of the line, which is mostly done by the operator. So I don't think the county would directly benefit, but the operator of the line would likely benefit from that.
Would this impact some of the maintenance though that we do, such as the crossings, things like that?
There could be an impact. I'm not sure if we've got anybody on that could speak a little bit more about the technical side of that, but I'd be happy to dig more in if you'd like later. I'm not entirely sure how much it would relate to the work that we do specifically.
I think maybe let's ask Ken. Oh, you're on mute, Ken.
Sorry, wrong button. I have the same answer. Unfortunately, I don't have that information myself, but we can certainly look into it more. If I recall, this bill did have some additional provision that I had questioned whether it excluded county-owned railroads. So we'll have to look into that, but we can get back to you on what the actual benefit would or would not be.
Sure. I would also be interested in potentially reaching out to BCYX and seeing if they would benefit from this and what their thoughts are as well.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so I think that's a solid stick a pin in this one, and we'll hear more about it.
Thank you, Council. I will ask those questions and get that back to you. And then the next bill I'd like to bring forward for your consideration today is Senate Bill 5296, which is a bill that Council opposed last year. And this bill would require courts to make an independent filing that juvenile rehabilitation is needed because a community-based placement would not be adequate in the case of the cases where basically, you know, they need the person on trial, the juvenile. Basically, they're saying a community-based placement is not appropriate for this person. Juvenile rehabilitation is the right approach. It requires the court to make an independent finding related to that, and also expands eligibility for juvenile disposition alternatives and provisions and requirements related to juvenile rehabilitation institutions and community facilities. And so these are things like expanded electronic home monitoring, local physical custody of youth. This is a bill that was opposed by WASAC, and I think that's why Council had weighed in on it last year. And the reason that WASAC is opposed is not necessarily for each of the component pieces of this, but what this bill does is it shifts responsibility away from the state to provide kind of these services and shifts the responsibility onto counties. And actually, WASAC had initiated litigation against the state a few years ago related to this issue. There was a stay placed on that litigation, and WASAC would ask for that stay to be removed and would try to pursue litigation again if this bill passes, because of the way that it shifts these responsibilities from the state to local governments. It would increase our costs significantly, as well as liability for counties, and so that would put us in a more challenging position if it were to move forward.
I would not just looking at this from a fiscal standpoint, but how the juveniles are faring under state care or any care. I would really just like to know more about this one.
Okay.
I think I would continue our opposition, but, try to convey the message, that we're not opposed to what it does, just how it does it, because I think it is important. We have a lot of work in this area to do, and this probably would help advance that work, but there's just, I would just express exactly what you mentioned.
Any other thoughts? So I think maybe this one deserves another pin.
Perfect. Thank you, Council. And then moving on, I've got a handful of other bills that were not ones that were brought up last year specifically. The Council took a position on, but that are related to some issues that the council has been talking about over the last little while, and I just wanted to bring up for your attention and to see if you're interested in taking a position at this time. The first one is House Bill 1508, which expands revenue generation and economic opportunities from natural climate solutions and ecosystem services on state trust lands. And what that means is the bill allows DNR to enter into what are called ecosystem service project contract agreements. And ecosystem service projects are projects that provide benefits that the public enjoys as a result of natural processes and biodiversity, including carbon sequestration and storage, air and water filtration, climate stabilization, and disturbance mitigation. And it allows DNR to purchase forest land and put it into trust with these ecosystem service agreements and generate revenue that way as a trust land option. And so this bill was not one that made it particularly far last year, but it does sound like it's going to be coming back. And I know council has been having a lot of conversations about our trust lands. And so I bring it forward for your consideration.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that is the way of the future. But where would that money go?
Let me see if it spells out in the bill exactly where that revenue goes. It looks like it is similar to other trust lands. So supporting public schools, universities, other services in counties.
Yeah, because if it is in trust for the county and local services, I think that's something we should support if the money's coming back to us for good things.
I'd be supportive of this one.
How would they purchase land? I mean, maybe would the revenue from it be for the intent to purchase more land?
Well, I think DNR would need to have the revenue to purchase the land. So they would probably need to put it into their, I know DNR has planning frameworks of, they're going to purchase X number of acres and they're looking for opportunities and they have some funding to do that from the state. They may advocate for Climate Commitment Act funding in order to do that. I think based on the way that the bill is written, it's not clear to me where they would get the revenue to do this, but what the bill would do is make this an allowable use when revenue is available for DNR to purchase land to put into trust this way.
Okay, I feel like I would need some more information on this to better understand what the impacts would be before I would support it.
Yeah. How I understand this, I would think the state would need to develop some sort of cap and trade program where they're selling credits because we're not harvesting, and that if we're sequestering, there's a dollar amount that could be ascribed to that, something along those lines. But that may be a program that's not been defined yet.
My understanding is that a lot of those programs, yes, are sort of in process of DNR, I know is working through, and some of the Climate Commitment Act funds have been used for those types of purposes, but this bill, it's not 100% clear, how they would utilize the mechanism or where they get the funding to begin purchasing those lands.
And just to add, there is a cap and invest program now, but it would be good it sounds like we'd like to learn a little bit more information before we make a final decision.
Councillor Belcott, would you like to add anything?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. So let's see, what's the tally here as far as support or I think we got a couple supportive and more information desired.
Yes. So so far the bills that council supported last year that are slated to return, council is still supportive of. And then the bills that council was neutral and opposed so far, council would like to get a little bit more information before taking a final position. And then the next bill on the list is House Bill 1593, which is another forest trust land bill, and it would create the Children's Social Equity Land Trust. And this would be a new classification of state trust lands that would be managed to provide revenue to support childcare sites and would authorize the acquisition of land to open up that trust. So I think this is another one where, again, subject to funding and availability, DNR would be authorized to acquire forested lands to be held in trust, which would have the new classification of these child care trust lands. And they would be held in trust for the benefit of families in need of childcare access in childcare deserts and overburdened communities across the state. And the DNR would manage these lands consistent with how it manages other trust lands. And so this would be one where it sounds like for the most part, it would be timber sales managed in a similar way to the way that the DNR is currently managing. And it would compel the Board of Natural Resources to develop policies around doing that. And then funds generated from management of these trust lands would be deposited into this child care trust account and would be used to grant out across the state funding for child care sites and providers in areas where there is a great need and a lack of child care.
Would this apply only to new lands that DNR acquires, or it would be just a new category to divvy up the funds from harvest?
It would be a new category, but my understanding is that whatever lands are set aside would be set aside specifically as this Children's Social Equity Land Trust. And so I think for the most part, this would be DNR purchasing new forest land to hold in trust and manage. There could be a mechanism by where other trust lands are converted into this, but the way that the bill is written, as I was reading it, it looks like for the most part it would be new lands that DNR would be purchasing and holding in trust.
Counselor?
Yeah, this is the first time I've heard of this. This is, I think, kind of dangerous. I think we'd want to learn quite a bit more before we make any decision. But, years ago, the federal government tied school funding to timber sales. It was a pretty smart political move because communities, of course, want to support youth education. And so it put an incentive on timber harvest and put a dependency of the local schools on timber harvest. And now we're in a situation where the federal government has to annually appropriate money to make up for the lack of timber harvest. This, of course, would put a similar kind of pressure on forest lands to increase harvest. So I think it's pretty dangerous, but I've never even heard of this before. So I would recommend we'd learn more.
I share that caution although I very much know there's a need for childcare and supporting childcare, it makes it kind of an impossible conflict.
I agree. It sounds wonderful by name, but sometimes the devils are in the details.
I also agree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. We will follow along and get some more information as this moves forward in the next session. The next bill that I have for you to consider is House Bill 1044, and this is coming out of, so last year Council supported House Bill 1042, which ultimately did not pass. But the issue that both of that bill and this bill are trying to address is the fact that our county treasurers are not really getting revenue recovery for the services that they are providing to our junior taxing districts. And as you'll recall, last year with House Bill 1042, what that would have done is allow the county treasurer's office to assess a small fee on the junior taxing districts that they would recoup, the following year, essentially, to help fund those services. This bill does the same thing, but in a different mechanism. and it would replace the current $5 fee on the filing of real estate excise tax affidavits with a new $20 fee. And what that fee would do is fund the statutory duties of the county assessor and the county treasurer. And so since council had supported a similar bill last year, I thought I would bring that up for your consideration here.
Would the entire $15 addition go strictly to the assessor and treasurer, or are there other uses that filing fee is being used for?
My understanding is that that $15 increase would go directly to support the work of county treasurers and assessors.
You know, and then I would wonder, does that offset general fund?
To the extent that we are subsidizing those costs with the general fund, it would offset that. I'm not sure how much we're funding from the general fund.
So I would I would want to make sure that that $15 stays local, and that we don't just get a carve out of that. And then I was wondering, I noticed Treasurer Topper in here earlier today. Have we heard from her on this particular bill?
I have not had a chance to chat with her about this particular bill.
Okay, and then I believe that this fee would be paid by the seller, but I would like to make sure that that is accurate. I think it's much better. People are much more able to sustain a higher fee when they are selling than they are when they're purchasing.
Sure.
I can look into that and make sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think we should be cautious on this one. It looks like a tax, even though it's a fee. And I've heard increasingly from our community that everyone's feeling that the costs of everything are higher, and they're very concerned about us considering sales tax increases and such. So I think we should be careful about consideration of a bill that would create a new tax.
All right, so we'll put a pin in this one as well, and look to get a little bit more information on that, and bring forward what we find. And then the final bill that I have for consideration, council has been talking a lot about mechanisms to support affordable housing, and so Senate Bill 5576 would allow cities and counties to impose a short-term rental tax. So this is on things like Airbnbs and Verbos of up to 4%. And that tax would only be on short-term rentals that are booked through a short-term rental platform or smartphone application. So in terms of the incidence of the tax, it is likely to mostly fall on folks from outside the local community. And the funds from the tax would be placed into the Essential Affordable Housing Local Assistance Account, which would be created by this bill. And the revenues generated would be, I think, split between the state and local governments. And those funds could be used for acquiring, maintaining, assisting with, or constructing affordable housing, or for rental assistance purposes.
Jordan,
Mhm.
do we know? I think with this particular issue, I think there are often a lot of unintended consequences, and I think it's important to recognize that some people are using Airbnb or similar platforms to be able to continue to afford staying in their home. So, for example, people are renting out a room on Airbnb versus their entire house, having a rental and using it as a short-term rental. So I would be curious to know if there is an exception to that if people are renting only a portion of the home that they live in. And I think it should be there.
I think that's a very good point and came up when this bill was discussed at the legislature. Any other thoughts on this one? And did you say it would be split between the local jurisdiction and the state?
Yes, that is my understanding. It's a state shared tax, kind of like the lodging tourism tax.
A 50-50?
Let's see if I have that in front of me. I don't have the exact split. I can get
All
that
right.
back. to
I'd
you.
be curious about that. I'm not sure about this one. I think it's a good one to watch as it unfolds in the legislature. We're pretty sure it's coming back.
I agree. I think that we should just watch this one, but I also likewise would like to know what that split is because my guess would be that we would only get a tiny bit of it.
Sure. Similar lines to my last comments, I'd also be wary of this one. I see this as the last one on your list. I'm sorry I didn't thoroughly look through this list before it, but it looks like other ones that we may be interested in, especially under housing. I'm curious about the ADU. One's focused on ADUs outside of urban growth boundaries, 1345, 5413. Also, something about residential prefab kit homes. There's two bills related to that, 5249 and 5552. I was just wondering if we could look a little bit more thoroughly at bills in that section to see if there may be ones that we may be interested in. And I saw a couple other ones when I was flipping through here. Something about community solar projects, 1598, and a couple other questions under public safety. I saw a couple that seems like they might benefit the jail. I'd just like to learn a little bit more about them. 14, let's see, 1743. I'm all over the place. 16 right now. 1743. 1465. And then finally, I saw something here put forward by Representative Stubbe about supporting backcountry search and rescue. I know that's a big issue for our county to the east. Wondering if it might help out our search and rescue teams as well at 1625. Sorry, I saw another one possibly related. Okay. 1596. Maybe we already talked about that. So I just think there might be a couple others here we want to look at more closely and bring to a future meeting. If you could help us look through those.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's wonderful. And yeah, I encourage, everyone to read through if there are bills of interest. I'm more than happy to dig in and get some more information and bring back. That's kind of that's the whole hope in this process, is so that we can identify what the council wants to prioritize next session. So
Okay.
I'm happy to dig into those and bring those back.
And just to add to that, in my other job, I'm a lobbyist in Olympia and DC and other states, and I consider funding budget issues equal to bill issues. So it's not as easy to wrap your hands around as a bill that has clear language and stuff, but we should consider which things in the budget we should support or not support. And I would like to have some recommendations from our lobbyist and you on what things we could do. And in my council reports today, I'm going to give a little update on the funding situation that I learned last week through my other job about hatchery funding and possibilities for increasing that and replacing those funds that have been removed. So that would be one thing on my list.
Okay, and I think as bills get introduced or of this large list of bills of interest, we can see, what begins to have some legs and take some positions there. I agree with the budget consideration, what what we can have some influence there and prioritize county needs related to the budget. Other comments or thoughts?
Great. Thank you,
Okay.
Council. So just to talk through the next steps here, yes, please review further if there are other bills that you're hearing about, other budgetary items you want to dig into. Now is the time for us to start getting organized. We'll have a fall meeting with the legislative delegation. We're in process of figuring out a time that will work both for councilors and the legislative delegation. As you can imagine, there are a lot of busy schedules, so we've had a couple of dates already not work. So we're working to find some dates that will, and we'll continue to identify your 2026 priorities. We already had that initial conversation in July, and we'll continue to flesh that list out in collaboration with you and in talking with our county departments. From that, we will finalize a county legislative agenda late in the year, so that we'll be able to bring that forward and be ready for the short 60-day session, which will begin on January 12th. And 60 days will go by very quickly. And with the fiscal constraints that the state is facing, I am guessing that a lot of these bills, anything that costs money, will fall by the wayside probably in this short session. So we'll continue to keep you up to date. Please reach out to me with any thoughts, questions, any other research or information you're looking to get, and we'll work with Josh and our lobbyists to find that information. And otherwise, if there are no further questions or comments, that is the presentation for today.
Oh, I do have one thought before that I made a note of here. I know ECHO had been talking about developing a legislative agenda that could be supported by all of the jurisdictions that participate in ECHO. And I wonder if that's something that they're discussing at this point.
We have had a few discussions about that in ECHO, and actually this last meeting that we had yesterday, I put out the call for bills and topics for potential support from ECHO membership, and I will be reminding them of that over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll start to have a draft version of that in October.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks for your work. A lot of work ahead of us too. Okay, that concludes our second work session.